home comfort isn't just a setting on your thermostat, it's how your whole home feels. It's more than just heating and cooling, it's peace of mind in every room.
At LCS Heating and Cooling, protecting that kind of comfort isn't just our job, it's our mission.
No matter what the weather brings, we'll do whatever it takes to keep your home feeling safe and comfortable.
You can count on us to protect the comfort you've worked so hard to create. Your comfort, our mission.
Ready for takeoff? Discover what real comfort really feels like with LCS Heating and Cooling.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.
It's November. What is November looking like this year? I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standridge. I always like to start with what a typical November is like. You're thinking, Matt, I already know what November is like. It's cloudy, it's cool, sometimes it snows. Well, yeah, but let's put some numbers to it. We'll get you some specifics before we get into some of the nitty-gritty averages and what really a November's like in Indiana. Got to start with daylight, the main driver of why we have weather changes and seasonal changes. This map shows you how much you'll at least lose across the United States. Notice, farther north you go, the more drastic the change. Farther south you go, less drastic. This is the case when we're losing daylight and then when we're gaining it. The farther north you go, closer to the North Pole, you get these drastic swings. Here in Indiana, we're at least losing 50 minutes. Just under an hour of daylight loss. We're not losing as much in November as we've been losing there in October and September. The pace is slowing down. This is actually the last full month of daylight loss here in the Northern Hemisphere because in December, all the way to the winter solstice, December 21st, we'll lose daylight. After that, we'll actually start gaining daylight again. But this map shows you how much we'll lose across the state. So Indianapolis, 53-minute loss. You get a little bit more of a loss the farther north you go, and we're in that 40-minute band for far southern Indiana, including the Evansville area. Specifically for Indianapolis, this gets kind of wonky for our sunrises and sunsets because remember, the night of November 1st and the 2nd, so right at the beginning of the month, we're having our time change. And so when you're looking at these sunrises, we start after the 8 o'clock hour, but we end there before the 8 o'clock hour. But if we didn't have the time change, this would be 8:45 in the morning. It'd be really late. Sunsets are after 6. They'll be just after 5 o'clock by the end of the month. But you do all the math and a daylight loss of a few more than 50 minutes out there for Indianapolis. So a couple different things I want to hit on. We'll get to some of the averages with even snowfall and rainfall and temperature drops, but we've got our full moon. It's at the beginning of the month. It will appear the fullest when you're just looking at the moon from Earth's perspective in the morning of November 5th. That's when it's 100% full, but it will appear full the night of the 4th into the 5th and then the 5th and to the 6th. So there 4th through 6th, you'll see a mainly full moon out there. It's called the beaver moon. They're getting ready for the winter, getting their dams up. It's also called the diggy moon because a lot of different animals like squirrels are kind of digging and different deer kind of digging at the ground a little bit. Also called the rutting moon, but just trying to find a little bit of food before some animals go into hibernation or just trying to find food as it becomes more scarce. And then also the freezing moon. Now we've already had our first freeze for the fall season, and we'll continue to have more freezing nights ahead as we jump deeper into November. But let's talk about temperatures. For the average for Indianapolis, we typically start there in the upper 50s. We drop to the mid 40s. Now, of course, are we ever average? It doesn't seem like it. We're always somewhere around it, above or below. But what you need to know is averages go from the 50s down to the 40s throughout the month of November. It definitely gets a lot cooler. Now, on average, we get more 50s than 40s when you're just looking at the daily average high. But in November, we get just over 3 inches. We start to see a slight uptick in our rain chances from the fall and into early winter, but 3.5 inches is what would be a typical average November once you put a bunch of these years together. The sun is getting a lot lower in the sky. I'm kind of hodgepodging you, kind of hitting you with a bunch of different things. Sun angle gets a lot lower. In the middle of the month, for solar noon in November, the sun is only 31 degrees above the horizon. It's a lot lower in the sky. So everything kind of looks a little bit more golden. That golden hour seems to last for quite a while. We're almost down to the minimum solar angle that we would get there at solar noon. That's actually in December at 27 degrees above the horizon. This is not to scale, but just kind of showing you roughly what we can expect. But November, the sun is very low in the sky. And on a sunny day, you'll see the shadows. They are extremely long. This is one reason why we're also getting cooler, because it's not just about how many minutes of daylight you get, but how intense is the sun. It's not that intense in November, even on perfectly sunny days, which are harder to do, which I'll show you in just a moment. But you don't get a lot of heat from a sun that's at the side rather than it just kind of beaming down on you. Speaking of that, UV index is super low. I think it's first, second, third, maybe the fourth lowest if I did the math really quickly. But UV index super low. You're not going to get sunburn here in November. But then we take a look at the sunny sky chance. In October, we got really close to a 50-50 shot, but here in November, we start getting right at 50-50 or lower. What that means is we're starting to get to the point where more days end up cloudy than are sunny. November's that big switching point, October into the start of November. We also notice more wind around here. During the summer, there's actually not a lot of wind unless you get a thunderstorm to come in. But now there's at least a little bit of wind almost every single day. The average wind speed daily is going up. Sometimes a little bit less than that, but you can get these stiff northwest winds coming right over Lake Michigan to sometimes give us lake effect clouds this time of year as the lake waters are still warm. But that wind gets stronger and stronger. You usually got a sustained wind, sometimes even above 10 miles per hour for the next several months. Now, a lot of that is blowing off of Lake Michigan. And so we start to now enter the cloudiest time of the year. In fact, 50% of our days in November typically are cloudy or mostly cloudy compared to being sunny or mostly sunny. So cloudy skies are now the kind of the rule of the game, and will stay that way through the winter and into early spring. We don't go back to a 50-50 shot really until April. Here we are, the cloudy season, the gray season has begun, but sometimes those clouds give us showers and sometimes they give us snowfall. November really is kind of the start of the snow season for Indiana. Yes, we've gotten snow showers in October, and there have been a couple years where we've got blasted with snow in October, but that's kind of the outlier, not necessarily the rule. So when you look at these averages, you'll see a technical maybe 0.1 inch, just depending on where you live for October. But November, we start to finally see some more snow showers. For the entire winter season, this is roughly how much Indiana would pick up when you look over the past 20 years or so. Over 60 inches right there in the primary lake effect snow belt once you get into far northern Indiana around South Bend. In Indianapolis, we're in that royal blue color, which shows we've got a good 20 inch or so. This is kind of the baseline. So somewhere in the 20-inch range. That can be up to 25.5, which is the official snowfall average for Indianapolis. Now, we haven't actually hit that in several years. We'll see what happens this year, and even farther west to the south. But this is the reason why you see so many bands. Number one, just the farther north you go, the colder you are. So when these storm systems come in, you won't probably get as much mixing for a lot of these systems. So you get higher snowfall totals farther to the north, where more mixing with some rain or ice would reduce your snowfall totals. But then you also have to factor in the lake effect, which really impacts northern Indiana. We do get lake effect snow showers in central Indiana, but they're usually a lot weaker. Now, sometimes you can get a couple inches if you got a big dose of some lake effect snow showers making their way this far south, but the biggest impacts are way off to the north. So let's break it up. We saw how much snow we kind of typically get on average, but what about per month? Well, November, like we said, it is the start, but it's really into December, January where you get the bulk of your snows. We can get snow in November, but when you average everything out, usually not too many big snows. It's happened before, but November usually is the month that most Hoosiers will start to pick up some of their first snowfalls coming through. On the flip side, November is a transitional month. We're going out of fall and really into winter. And, fall, we can still have some warm days. But the next time a cold front comes in, severe weather is always a chance. Well, in November, we have most of the chances farther to the south. We don't really have too many chances in Indiana. Every once in a while, though, you can have a system that can be a doozy, but it's not every November. So kind of accounting for that, it's very hit or miss. But November, when you look overall, through the fall and early winter season, November would be one of your more active months when it comes to tornadoes. 2 tornadoes on average when you're looking between 2000 to 2024. Most activity would be farther to the south. Now the deep south starts to awaken, especially once we get in December and January. Their tornado season really ramps up. But if we can get some warm air to come in before a cold front, we could get severe weather chances. They're usually brief, they come in, and then much colder air moves in after that. So we'll keep a close eye on severe weather, but it's not usually a huge month. We've got two different severe weather peaks. There's the spring and there's the late fall. So we're kind of still in that one, but it's not nearly what the spring one is once we get to March, April, and May. Now let's head to the tropics. I have some good news for you. Hurricane season is just about done, officially. Officially, the season goes until November 30th because the ocean waters, they're in the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Gulf, are usually still warm enough or barely warm enough to support tropical cyclones. We're actively cooling off the oceans. Here's a look at the frequency of when you could see these hurricanes, or even at least just a named system. Notice in November, it's a huge downhill slide. Peak was way back into September. We are going down big time. We still get a system or two. We have had Hurricane Melissa that went through Jamaica, going through Cuba earlier into the start of, well, the end of October and early November. And we still have some warm waters in these areas. This is a map showing you where the origin would be for any of these storm systems, most likely, and this is where we still have some warm waters. But notice how the Gulf is cooling down because these fronts come in, they clear Indiana, and we can get some fronts as far south as the panhandle of Florida, and that's helping to cool off some of the Gulf waters and cooling off the Atlantic seaboard a little bit. You got to get out farther to sea to still have some warmer waters. But November, we really start seeing this map shrivel. If you remember, if you've watched some of our monthly previews, it's kind of just a colorful map. You can see the legend there across parts of the Caribbean and into the western Atlantic. Really, we see November starting to have a downward trend. Now, because most systems form a little bit closer to land, here in November, we don't have as many of the big systems that start off from Africa and make their whole way off towards the west. That's not as common here in November, as we're also cooling the temperature waters here in the central Atlantic. If something forms, it's only a couple days out from a potential landfall in the United States. So we still have to watch in November. We've gotten some gnarly systems before, so we'll keep a close eye. All right, so we just kind of broke down what Indiana is like in November, kind of back to the beginning. It's chilly, it's windy, have a lot of clouds, and sometimes it snows. Well, that's your average. What about this year specifically? Well, to be honest, there aren't really huge cues for this November. After a cool end to October, we do think there is a chance the jet stream that carries this cooler air south may be able to press a little bit farther to the north for the first at least couple weeks of November. We think we'll be able to warm up a little bit. If we do get systems, they'll be small and shallow coming right over the Great Lakes, which could impact Indiana. But we're not seeing maybe as many huge systems, at least for the first part of the month, to come on through from the west. If something happened, it'd be maybe one of them. But the frequency would be lower. We should get some higher pressure and more heat. We're thinking there's a better chance to be warmer than normal with some higher pressure off towards the west and to the south of us. So we'll really keep an eye for fronts sneaking in from the north rather than too many fronts just going west to east. That's what we'll watch for this November. When it comes to rainfall, there really isn't a clear signal, to be honest, this year. For November, what we may notice is if the jet stream can be a little bit farther north, near the U.S.-Canadian border, that would keep them a little bit wet, but maybe you're not carrying too many systems farther to the south. You get these systems that kind of skirt the northern tier of the U.S. and maybe could drop a little bit towards Great Lakes. So really, this November is not very clear. So we kind of have to go back to our default. Cloudy, chilly, windy, and sometimes it snows.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.